Tomorrow, so I'm looking forward to that. So again, welcome, Monique. We're fortunate to have her here today. We'll talk about why a career in technology matters for women. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm very, very happy to be here, and on a topic that I think is, well, I believe, is extremely important for us all. It's a universal topic. Not many people know I was actually born in North Carolina, so just to let you know, and I worn the appropriate colors, not the blue that you see out there. So, and what I'm going to talk about is going to be provocative for you all, because it's a world, global topic, and it's a challenge for us to think about why should we even think about why a career matters for women in technology. Some of the things that I would like for you to think about, I'm going to talk about the situation, so you're going to see a lot of data, a bit about what's happening at Cisco, because we are data-driven too as a company. We have to think about how to address these overarching issues, and also the call to action. And it's a call to action for us all. Let me just take a step back. What I talk about is so global. I was in London and, on March 5th, the Women in Science and Engineering group, and people were talking about how do we get more women in science and engineering, and these were women from Oxford and from Cambridge University, and always the same topic. Do we have this self-confidence? What is going on? What's this? Is there a pipeline? Is there a leaky pipeline? And we don't know what that looks like, other than the fact there are some observations. I challenge you to think about some of those observations as I have been thinking about those observations. And by the way, I'm going to talk about also personal stories too, right? Because each of us has a personal story in terms of what it's like to be the only woman in the room, what it's like to be the only woman of color in the room. What does that mean, and how people perceive you? What are the biases that we have to pay attention to? So the situation is probably as follows. We at Cisco recognize that we have to care about this topic about women in technology. In fact, here's the thing that, as you can see, is that we have women who represent about 37%, 1984, 1985. We see a decline in studies, which is of concern to us. Although they come in, what's going on? What is going on? And you have to think about, you're all studying here, what do you think is going on here? So we are looking at, this is a great opportunity, but yet something is happening in between. Lots of statistics here, ladies and gentlemen. We are a statistic-driven company, but what you find is that, we're seeing somewhat of a decline in, although women will uptake and take on computer science, and they'll come in engineering, what we see is now somewhere in between, there's not this perception that they can continue. What I care about is what happens when you get in, right? What Lori cares about is you coming and staying in, and what we collectively need to think about is how do we keep that together. Now, it so happens that the pay scale is a little closer aligned, than other non-technical degrees, which is really interesting. But we've got something going on here, and we've got to figure out what that is. I think when we have this dialogue, it seems intuitively obvious to us that of course it matters. Of course diversity matters in this area. But something is attuned here that we have to think about. In the United States, ladies and gentlemen, we have a crisis. I live on the other side of the Atlantic. It's a bit of a crisis, but not as severe as it is here. So, bing, 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 lots of things that we have to care about. In fact, students in the United States rank 18th, is it, in math, and 13th in science and literacy? Lori would give you an F, right? We're not Greece. But that's a problem. Why is that? And by the way, the government is concerned about this whole issue, STEM, right? Studying science and technology, engineering, and mathematics. Yet we have a decline. Something is awry in this whole area. So they're not graduating, or they're not staying, or we see that. So only 40% of the students, as we see, start as undergraduate STEM majors, and they're ranked, if I compare to the other countries, they're ranked 40th. Now, I live in Switzerland, so it's a little higher, but they're ranked 40th. And so we have a call to action upon all of us, because I'm going to tell you it's not just about the study of science and technology and engineering and math. It's not just about having it in high school or grade school, which we as a company are involved in. It's also about the career opportunities that you have, right? And the career opportunities are extremely important for us as a United States of America to be very competitive. So in that, as I continue sort of the dialogue, and if we're going to ignite the fire a little even more, we have, 4 in 5 STEM college students made the decision to study, most of you in this room. And they said it's to study STEM earlier in schools, but 51%, here we go, 51% of STEM college students and parents of kindergarten to 12 students do not feel that the program for students and careers in STEM is at a top priority. Something happens. Is it in home? But they don't yet feel that's a priority. So we have net an industry that is in crisis. Now, let me take a step back. These numbers new for you? Are you alarmed? You should be. You should be. I want you to stay in computer science and engineering. I want you to stay. You need to stay, all right? Don't leave. You don't have to get A's, because when you come out of school, I'm not asking you about your grade. I'm going to ask you what you did, what your vision is, right? So here's the thing, why it's important. Well, cybersecurity is in a hiring crisis. Just before Lori introduced me, I was reading that the White House was hacked by Russians, maybe? Just a few minutes ago. Okay? Cybersecurity. If you think about the Internet of Things, you think about state-sponsored security, you think about cyber terrorism. Cybersecurity is in a hiring crisis, not only on this side of the world, but in the other side of the world. So you think about cloud computing, whatever you want to do, think about cybersecurity. We need you. We need that space. The other is, we have, again, these major security shortages, and the cyber attacks are getting more and more and more and more interesting. How many of you read the book, some homework, The Dark Knight? All right. So the dark net, rather, it's the dark net, sorry, the Dark Knight is another thing. The dark net. See, I'm thinking already in Batman. The dark net. It's actually a book that was written probably about a year ago by a British journalist. And what you see here is that the early adopters of technology are the very people you're trying to protect yourselves from. The pedophiles, the drug dealers, the terrorists, the very people. They're the very people that adopt the technology. So we need security people. In fact, I was in Maryland last October, and we were in a conference together, and some of the academic, the folks from universities were looking at the call to action as the types of people they're looking for. So I'm pausing here because you're studying computer science and engineering, you're studying a form of technology, and to tell you, as I paint this narrative that we have a crisis, but we have a crisis not only in the study itself or the disciplines itself, but we have a crisis in terms of the shortage of skill sets that we need to fill in for industry. Very, very important. And then, of course, we have lacking of the expertise, the knowledge, and frankly, the information, as we see here, is not evolving fast enough. And when I say women, they only represent 11%. 11%. So very interesting. And then millennials don't even think they should even have a career in this space. They don't even know about it. Now you do. Now you do. They don't even know about it. They don't even entertain that they could have a career in this space. Now I pause here because it is a shortage that we think about. I pause here also because if we're talking about cloud computing, if you're talking about the Internet of Things, things that are emitting so much information, that you have some issues around privacy, some issues that you have to think about. The implications are very, very severe. And then with that is this whole notion of cybersecurity in any type of fashion. So call to action, you know, your discipline is an extraordinarily important discipline to have. So that's the skills shortage. And then, of course, the faces and images of people, of women in cybersecurity, and I've gotten to meet quite a few interesting. Some of them don't look like this, but they, you know, you have hackathons. You have interesting hackathons. If you go to DEF CON or if you go to Black Hat, very, very interesting. What they realize is that there's an interest in solving a problem together. That's really, really key. Together we all work and solve this problem. And so quite a few people that are beginning to be in the cyberspace. And the reason why I pause here is that I'm also the co-executive sponsor at Cisco, not only of Women in Science and Engineering, but I am the co-executive sponsor of Women in Cybersecurity, along with our male colleagues who really, really want to get men and women especially, in this space. So the next few slides are going to, as I pause here and I talk to you a little bit about the issue of crisis that we have in the United States, the issue of opportunity, I'm going to talk about a few areas where we have to think about you know, prejudice, what I'll call unbiased behavior that we have to call out here. And this is done by a researcher, senior researcher at the National Women's Institute of Technology, Information Technology, Ashcroft, and she's actually done some research, something that we have to think about, some of the unbiased behavior. And yes, I've spoken a little bit about the statistics. We've got lots and lots of interest from women to be in this field, but something is going awry here. What is it, right? What is it? They leave at twice the rate of men, 56% by mid-career. 56% by mid-career. So once I get you, and by the way, we're having this dialogue today in my company, what happens? Let me take a step back. So, personal story, I'd like to share my narrative here. Personal story, I leave the United States to go to Switzerland. People thought, oh, you're going to be back, you're going to be back. Leave the United States. So I was a network engineer, loved engineering, and go into the Swiss company. And actually, I had several things against me at the time. One is, I'm the youngest person in the room. Okay. I'm the only woman, but I was senior engineer. Right? And I was a foreigner. A very Swiss, very conservative company. So we're all there to try to solve a problem together. All of us trying to solve the problem together. We have a meeting. At the time, I was just learning German. That's another thing. Learn foreign languages, please. Learn foreign languages. Need to do that. Some people join the Army to see the world. I joined Cisco. So, the first thing is, the engineering manager looks at me and he says, what's your name?
Heather.
Heather.
Yes.
Could you please take the notes? Says, Monique, could you please take the notes? And I said, well, you know, I said, how about we have an agreement, since you're tapping in on my expertise, how about we have an agreement that he or she who calls the meeting takes the notes? Okay? So that was one experience. I have a colleague who's a vice president in our company at a senior leadership summit, and she's an engineer. She studied physics, by the way. In a meeting, and actually she's in a lobby with two other engineering executives. They say, one of the guys comes up to her and says, are you in HR? Now, nothing against HR. I think we need great people in HR. But are you in HR? Now, what was the mistake the two friends over here who know Heather? They didn't intervene on her behalf and say, no, she's one of the top engineering leaders in the company, right? And the last thing I'll say is a great story of a CEO, right? This is happening today. This is the 21st bloody century. CEO in a company She's got clients coming in, big conference table. She's little, comes in, and the clients are saying, honey, can you get us some coffee? She goes and gets the coffee. She gets the coffee. Honey, can you get us the notebooks? She goes and gets the notebooks. Until she sits at the head of the table, did they realize she was the CEO. And by the way, they didn't do business with them. She didn't do business with them. So it's happening today, ladies and gentlemen. It's happening in our companies. It's happening in our environments. And by the way, I have a colleague who was one of the only engineering students in her class and was told by the professor, honey, you're in the wrong class. Okay? So we have that as a bias, and we got to get away from it, right? We really do. So women, 57% of the professionals, only 5% of the technology leadership jobs are there. And by the way, I'll talk about Cisco's own statistics. We want to do something about it. The good news is we do want to do something about it, right? So why women matter? Well, they do. They've got to matter. They reflect the customer base. They are untapped resources. They can fill growing jobs. I mean, we've got to think of not only women. Women are, you got to have the reflection of your society in your companies and in your environments. And if you don't have that reflection, you are not going to be relevant. Simple as that. Not going to be relevant. And in fact, groups, we have studies that groups with diversity solve complex problems. And we had a situation, there's a study where you had this left-handers. How many of you are left-handers? There you go. So there was a study done, and this very, very famous, this company produced a phone. And the phone was not being held by the left-hander. And they didn't realize that they had to do some testing. They found out later that that was their problem. In fact, the CEO of that company is ambidextrous. But it was a learning for him, right? It was a learning for him. And that's really, really key. So, the research says we can talk about all of the tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of data. And there's data. There's data that suggests that we just have to make this right. So let's cut to the chase, shall we? Let's cut to that chase. Technical women aren't the problem. They're not broken. You're not broken. And technical men aren't the enemy. Not at all. In fact, what you have is, you have something here that is a bit of bias. You have something, when you're in that room and you're in that table, and by the way, I like to solve problems. I don't care about who you are. But something happens when you're together. And we have to pay attention to how we behave with one another. Another personal story. I was on a WebEx call. How many of you used WebEx? Right? Great. And WebEx has the capability of you raising your hand. So if you're a good moderator, you're going to call out and say, Heather needs to be heard. Lori needs to be heard. You need to say, please, you need to be heard, right? And so what was happening was I couldn't get a word edgewise. I mean, kept raising my hand. Moderator, the guys, God bless them, talking on top. They were so excited about this really great, hot technical problem. They weren't giving me a chance to be heard. So I hung up. Little did I know, I hung up the entire conference call. and I did. I mean, it was really embarrassing, but And somebody called me and said, well, what the hell happened? And I said, well, you weren't giving me a chance to be heard. Now, let me take another personal story. I should have been at South by Southwest. You know that, right? You heard about Eric Schmidt and Megan Smith and Walt Isaacson, who's biographer of Steve Jobs. What happened there? Homework. Here's what happened. And we see this a lot. This is something we have to pay attention to. God bless Eric Schmidt. Eric Schmidt, Isaacson, the moderator's asking a question, but Eric is taking Megan's question and answering on her behalf. If you don't know Megan Smith, she's the CIO of the United States, and she was, after all, at Google X. Okay, she worked for Eric. she's not getting the opportunity to respond because people are talking over her. These two wonderful men talking over her. A room of 500 people, what happens? Somebody in the back of the room raises her hand, says, I think there's something wrong here. Heather, Megan, is not having a chance to respond. You're catching her questions and not letting her respond. They're so exuberant. And there was a roaring applause in the room. Roaring applause. And what happened, who was that person? It was the diversity officer at Google. And what she said, they have a culture at Google that says, I will call out behavior that I think is wrong. And this was wrong. Megan deflected it very nicely. You can actually look it up. It was tweeted all over the place very nicely and said, you know, I've been in situations where they don't listen to your ideas. I mean, look at Megan Smith, for God's sakes, until somebody co-opts the idea, which is unfortunate, right? So we have a CIO named Rebecca Jacoby. And Rebecca talks about this too, right? And she's a CIO in the company. And she was talking about early situation like this. Called in, the manufacturing's burning down, right? Manufacturing's burning down, we gotta solve this problem. Now, she's brought in and she thinks, this looks obvious to me. Only woman in the room. And she said, what if we tried X, Y, and Z? And so, wonderful name?
Dylan.
Dylan and?
Nolan.
Dylan and Nolan say, yeah. And then they go on. Dylan, Nolan, and? Daniel are talking, right? And Heather, Rebecca is going, okay. Next day, same thing. They're going, because it's getting hot. It's a really I mean, we're going to get in trouble, right, as a company. Dylan, Nolan. I mean, they were up talking. Heather, Rebecca, why don't we try X, Y, and Z? Yeah, okay. So she was living, her nephew, 21 years old, was living with her at the time. She tells a story. It's a beautiful story. And she said, you know, gosh, darn it, you know, something's wrong here. And he said, well, Aunt Becky, you don't get it. Rebecca, right? Aunt Becky, you don't get it. They're already sizing one another up. They don't know how to take you, right? They know how they are in the totem pole. This is true story, right? So you need to kind of put on the engines a little more, which is really hard, not really difficult for Rebecca. So she comes in and she said, why don't we try X, Y, and Z, and don't move on until you tell me it's ridiculous, stupid, or crazy, or we discuss it. What did they do? They discussed it. They discussed it. But, you know, that's a kind of an example that was current at the time, right? I mean, current. And so we still live with that. And that's things that we have to pay attention to. So, actually, Susan has a great idea. Heather has a great idea. Well, whoops. I forgot to include her on an email. Whoops. Or, well, I'm not sure she really created that algorithm. And so what happens? We all go, and guys do this very well, they go for meetups. They discuss it at the bar. I know because I've been at the bar, right? And it's great, but some people don't like to go to the bar. And let's go talk it over the beer. This is reality. And so what does it do to Heather's self-confidence? It erodes her. It erodes your self-confidence. And these are the types of behaviors that we have to be very, very, very cognizant of. So that's my challenge to you all. And so hiring is another thing. We have this sort of selectional bias. Let's hire people that look like me, that look like Monique, right? Let's do that. Let's hire, and that's the other thing is when you're in an established company, we tend to do that. Find women who are given low-task jobs. I was at that Women in Science event in the UK, and we had women who were talking about the fact just because they weren't vocal were sort of given these low-task jobs. And of course, you're appraised on, some men are appraised on, the performance, and women on sort of collaboration and luck. And so this is kind of the reality of what we see today. This is a fact-based study, but it's also on personal experience. So it's also on personal experience. So this is going to, if it doesn't get you angry, you should be. to a call of action. In fact, at that event, I had a chance to meet, some more homework, a lady named Laura Lisward. And Laura used to work at Goldman Sachs, financial company, pretty heavy duty. She's a lawyer. And she wrote a book. It's an interesting book, which I think we should all look at reading, which is The Loudest Duck, Moving Beyond Diversity While Embracing Differences to archive successful work. And what she's saying is you have this loudest duck, right? Whoever cracks the loudest gets heard. But in some cultures, if you're in China, if you're the loudest duck, you're shot. If you're in Japan, you're the loudest nail, you're actually pounded. So we have cultural differences that we have to think about. And so it's all about being heard. And by the way, in this example, when they did a study, they asked the group of men, white males, are you promoted based on meritocracy? And they had 4 people representing different parts of the population. The interesting thing is, of a company, the white males believed that they were being promoted on meritocracy. The other 3 groups did not. So again, and Ken and I, we were talking early, again, we have to look at the other foot. We have to be able to walk in the other person's shoes at any point in time. And I'm confident with you all, that we'll be able to do exactly that. So at Cisco, well, we care deeply about STEM. In fact, we care so deeply about it. We're in Network Academy and countries throughout the world. We're looking at how to imbue technology also in schools. We are just very, very, very focused on getting the appetite for STEM in society, not just in the United States, but globally. How do we use that technology? We're also involved in the entire US 2020 STEM mentoring, and we've pledged as a company 20% of our US employees will provide at least 20 hours of STEM mentoring per year by 2020. And we are involved in some of these organizations, as you see here. So very, very involved as a company. We care deeply about it. We care so deeply about it, and a lot of our employees are personally involved. These are our partners, and those are just not an example of the ecosystem of partners with whom we work. And I think this is great. So it's not, we're there, but we're a step forward. However, we did publish our statistics, right? And, well, we got a ways to go. The good news is we did publish them. You actually can go fetch them. So we have, ladies and gentlemen, let me get these numbers correct here. We have 74,032 employees globally. Got to give you numbers because Professor Laurie is going to kill me if I don't produce exact statistics. 85% of the company's technical roles are to men. All right? And so we are, we're in 158 countries throughout the world, so we already have an alarming problem already. And if I take engineering, by the way, I'm in the engineering group, you can take, okay, that's 10,340 people. Okay. And so we have a ways to go. And when we look at the female managers, 19% are female. Yes, we have 5 wonderful females at the very top. Our CFO, Kelly Kramer, she's a mathematics major from Purdue. We have Padma Shri Warrior, who's our CTO. We have the head of HR, we have the head of marketing, we have Becky, but that's at the top. And John Chambers recognizes this as a challenge. So the good news is we've published our statistics. But let me tell you what Padma Shri Warrior said in the Huffington Post view. She said, we are a company, and by the way, that was based on a 10-year study. In 10 years, we moved maybe 2%, not positive. We're a company that prides ourselves in how fast we move technically. We can't wait. London, I'm interviewed for an award. And so the gentleman asked me, what does success look like for you, Monique? And I said, success is we don't have to talk about this. It's in our DNA. It's absolutely in our DNA. We don't have to talk about it. Do you know what he said to me? It'll be a generation. And I'm thinking, really? Do you believe it's going to be a generation? How can we dare believe that, right? We can't believe it's going to be a generation. And I was at an event at the end of February at Columbia University. Same dialogue as we had in London, same dialogue as I have globally. It's a lightning rod. It's a lightning rod. And I don't believe it's going to take us a generation. And by the way, we didn't even talk about the pay part. The pay part was 81 years, according to the UN study. 81 years. Come on. That's a call to action. So we have a great program. So directionally, we're moving in. We're recognizing that we have to address this issue. We have something called Cisco Min for Inclusion. And that is for men looking at women as business equals and women looking at males for reciprocity. And we have to, I have the power of the and here, the power of the and. In fact, part of my job, and so this is the pledge, to call out those unbiased behaviors, for y'all to do exactly that, so that you don't put her on the spot, and you to look to him, to this team here. By the way, you're going to be a great team, great company, on making sure that you can work together. It's the same thing for women. And how important is this? Well, at the end of October, I was in Korea. I was one of 6 people recognized as a global achiever for being passionate about this topic. And in fact, we had the actress Gina Davis, who was also recognized. She is an ambassador for this. She's trying to change what's happening in the industry overall, especially in entertainment industry. And she has a scholarship, by the way, if you're interested in studying for big data and analytics. So I was at October, so we had this discussion with ministers, because part of my job also is involved in tech policy, the United Nations level. Receiving the award, and somebody had quoted that famous quote from Madeleine Albright, there's a special place in hell for women who don't help women. And what I said to the ministers was, and they went, there's a special place in heaven for men who help women. And now that's so true, because it is that power of the end. We need all of us to work together. And this is a big discussion at a global level. And so another interview I had was, well, when is it really over, Monique? And I said, well, gee, when a girl in Pakistan is not going to be killed because she wants an education, or girls in Nigeria are not going to be kidnapped because they want an education, right? I think we need, so ladies and gentlemen, it's not STEM, but it's a bigger issue here. And we have to address it, and we have to look at it from a societal perspective. So, as we move forward, because I want to give you some chances to ask some questions, here's the call to action. Marian Wright Edelman, you know who she is. If you don't, please do look her up. If you don't like the world, and this is really important, if you don't like the way the world is, you can change it, you have an obligation. You all have an obligation to change it. We all do, in this room, have an obligation to change it, and you just do it at one step at a time. You just do it at one step at a time. We absolutely need to do that. So we want you, and if you're in IEEE, by the way, okay, computer science, but IEEE engineering is okay too. Need you. You need to, really. This is really important. Let's break that mold. Also, I love this cartoon, right? What does success look like? Well, success looks like this a bit, right? You don't have to talk about it. This is a physics cartoon, and it's a really cute cartoon, but fundamentally, you have this girl, she's a physicist, she's measuring all these kilograms, and the guy goes, okay, let's pound. And she says, well, I don't pound, I weigh it. I'm a physicist. And he said, Okay, marry me. You know, so you see equal, equal, equal. And that's really what it looks like at the end of the day. That's success. Ladies and gentlemen, you got future engineers coming up too. That's your future. Somehow it's not, doesn't want to stay. My future doesn't want to stay. There it is. Well, anyway. Can. So we'll go back to the future. But fundamentally, you can get me, yeah, it's a video. Just put me back to the last one. Not the last one, the second last one with the girls, the young girls. That second last one, that'd be great. That second, it's the second last one. So the future is, you got these young girls coming up, and they want to be engineers too. And I met an amazing, amazing girl. It's okay, they're women engineers in development. Okay, it's okay, just move it to the next one. We'll talk about that in a minute. And she's 22 now, all right, 3 degrees, computer science, electrical engineering, mathematics. And she's a Marshall Scholar in Cambridge, the UK. What she is challenged, what she does, this is why I say we all have something important to do with this technology, right? It's not about your A's or your B's or your C's. It's about what you want to do at the end of the day, your vision. And she said, Monique, I'm concerned about educational toys for girls. You walk in, and what do they look like? I have to walk in the guys section to get really excited with it. So she's kind of interestingly enough working at Pixar to see if she can do something about that. But she also is, and I'm on her board, she also teaches girls mathematics via dance. And junior high and high school girls. In fact, they have proven through that experience that the grades have gone up and they're excited about mathematics. So she's done that. And she's 22 years old. So she has this cause to do something with the technology. And so Shine for Girls is the thing. So you can do a lot with this. It's not just your job. So you can't see it, you can't be it. And that's really important, ladies and gentlemen. This was a shot taken of me when I was in Dubai in 2012. And I was taking a position on behalf of the company, not the government, although I'm involved in part of some of tech policy representing the United States. And what was interesting was right before I was getting ready to speak, and the photographer came and took the picture. And I was the only woman in that room. I was the only woman in that room. So, in a faraway country, talking about the importance of standards, right away. And so, you know, what I'm suggesting to you is that this is globally our opportunity to change the way things are. And it's your opportunity as young women and as young men to do that together. So I think you can do that. Thank you.
All right, so we got time for some Q&A.
Absolutely.
And so what we'd like to ask is if you'll raise your hand. We have a couple of ambassadors, and they will get a microphone to you. Hold your question until you get the mic. That way we'll get it on video, okay?
We have a person in the back.
Hey, I am a middle school technology and engineering teacher. Mm-hmm. And my question is, especially for all the CIS majors here, my boys have great introduction to coding games that they can do, yep. But my girls start them and then they're like, Miss Elliott, this is for boys, this is boring. So, like, is there a focus anywhere on girl coding development? Uh-huh. I know there's a lot of programs like summer camps for girl coding, but just in terms of actual games that are already developed.
No, it's a great question. And by the way, you want to make coding very fun too, right? So we have not only Code for America that we're concerned about, we also have a wonderful woman engineer who actually, she is an African-American, sent her girls to coding school, but realized that they were not a reflection, her girls were not a reflection of the course, and she created her own school for African-American girls who can code. So you have to make it really, it has to be fun. It has to be, I have come across 12-year-old girls who are so infatuated about what they can do with an application. You know, I always say there's the art part too, you know, to put them into sort of an opportunity to solve really cool problems together. And I think it's more that than anything else. I met, okay, plug, IEEE conference, Women in Engineering, be there. It's in April, a couple weeks. I met a wonderful 14-year-old girl there. She's been coding since, her dad is a stay-home dad, her mom. Dad is almost like a coach for her, you know. She is thinking so exponentially on problems she wants to solve, and she just loves coding, and so much so that you've got startups who are interested in her. She's not even thinking about college yet. She's thinking about, how do I solve? So here's an example of a problem she was thinking about. She's going to a grocery store in the Bay Area in San Jose, and she sees bagels being thrown away. And she said, you know, Daddy, why are they throwing away these good bagels? And crosses a homeless man, and then finds out the homeless shelter, somebody has to connect these two. You know, that there's bagels, probably good, it's really good stuff, and connected to the shelter where you can pass out that food. And she wrote an app for that. She's writing a geofencing app, which is interesting about, you know, where are your children? She's writing an app around areas and parts of Mumbai that are known to be violent for women. I mean, she's just looking at the problems that she wants to solve, right? And those are examples. So you have to kind of make it so state it as it's fun, and kind of characterize it as an opportunity to look at you know, what you can do with it, with art, etc. Does that make sense? Any questions? Yes, please.
Is it me? Is it me? I just wanted to pipe in for the girls. I'm over here.
And then him. We're going to get, no, it's you, and then we're going to give this gentleman a chance to speak too. Okay.
I've actually started launching a chapter of Tech Girls here in the Triangle for
Fantastic.
Middle school age girls. It's totally a nonprofit organization. Everything is free for the girls to come out and learn. We have a lot of hands-on sessions, so it's definitely another resource for you.
That's great. That's great. This gentleman here? Oh. Grab the mic. Question, comment? Have you been inspired?
Yeah, so there are a number of people around the world whose views on women are shaped by their religion.
That's true.
It seems like that's a really big problem, and it's seems like a very difficult one to solve.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see that moving forward, especially a lot of these religious beliefs may be deeply held by these individuals?
So, a great question. In fact, so let me tell you, so I had a chance to have a telepresence with a group of women, budding women scientists in Saudi Arabia. And actually, we were looking at how we were going to grab them for research. You know, they were either going to go to Microsoft or they're going to come to us. We're going, you're going to come to us. I have to tell you, there is a hunger. And so you're right. You've got some challenges in some of the examples I've stated, but you know it doesn't preclude the fact that we can have at least that dialogue together. I have actually lived on the other side of the world. In fact, what I didn't tell you is I lived 5 years and hybrided in Hong Kong, and that took me out throughout the region. People get to know their geographies a little bit, you know, India and Southeast Asia, etc. So you get a view of how technology is perceived by various people. But in my course of travels, I had an opportunity to meet, and this was really interesting. We were having this telecom event, and Ken, you would probably know that, an ITU telecom event in Geneva. and John Chambers was there. Okay. Now, this is like a mini UN thing, and John Chambers is there, and if you don't know John, there's several things. It's got to be Diet Coke, no Pepsi, Diet Coke, and everything is sort of orchestrated. I had a chance to have a keynote. I shared a breakfast keynote with a wonderful girl from Afghanistan, okay, who actually has a B2B portal that she opened up and actually selling women's wares and you know, so sort of that, having that exchange and giving the money back to these women to craft things. And she said, you know, people only hear the negative stories, but you don't hear this story. And in that breakfast, what was very interesting, and this is important for you all to know, you had ministers coming in for the breakfast, and it didn't matter if you were from Israel, it didn't matter if you were from Palestine, it didn't matter, we were all sitting at different tables. So when the ministers came in, they were going, where's the country X table, where's the country Y table? And there was a reason for that. And the reason was to share a dialogue together. Those are the examples of a starting point. So what did I do with this woman? Why did I bring John Chambers up? I take her to the Cisco Pavilion. Chambers comes out for a break. He's got his Diet Coke in his hand. He's happy now because Duke won yesterday, but anyway. And he comes out, and I said, John, and everybody's going, oh my God, this is unorchestrated. You don't do this with John. I'd like to introduce you to this wonderful young lady from Kabul. And John gives her his business card, and she explains her background, and he spent 15 minutes with her. 15 valuable minutes with her. Unorchestrated. He was so moved by it. It was one-on-one. And she invited him to go and visit the Afghanistan pavilion. You know, it was very small, very small. But at least he had the chance to visit her. And that was really fun, great. And then she had a dialogue with, of course, the press wants to talk with her, et cetera. But it's how we kind of put together a world to get over these kind of, overcome some of these what we call obvious barriers. And you need to know, at that breakfast, you had people who you would think were common enemies sitting at the same table. And they were sharing a wonderful dialogue about technology and about what they wanted to do with that technology. That was blessed. It was blessed. Yeah.
So there's a lot of issues that women face in industry.
Yep.
So how do you recognize the issues, but still be able to move beyond that and not let the issues define women in the industry?
So you don't allow yourself to be the victim or play the victim. So, you know, even though the fact that I had to, these are the examples. You're always going to be faced with, by the way, that's everybody, but particularly for women with certain biases, you have to kind of take a step back, recognize it, and then a step forward, right? You can't leave the room and say, I'm the victim, because it's so easy to do that. It's so easy to do that. So when I go back to, I live in Switzerland, and in working for this first Swiss company, very Swiss company, as I told you, my manager at the time gave me a book. Now remember, I'm the youngest person, youngest engineer, foreigner. And he gave me the book called The Kleine Machiavelli. The Kleine Little Machiavellians. And it was a parody, it is a parody, you can read it, translate, of leadership in Switzerland. And the largest, the Army is the largest Rotary club in the world. And so I'm reading it, and it's really interesting. It was written in the mid-'80s. And so here's how the gist is. And so you read that, and you got to go, okay, I've got some areas, but this is interesting. And it went like this. To be a successful leader in Switzerland, it's changed now. Obviously, I wouldn't stay. To be a successful leader in Switzerland, you have to be married and have 2.5 children. 0.5 is the pet. You have to be a member of the Conservative Party, okay? And you can pick out the Conservative Party. You have to be a member of a Verein. That's a club, a music club, you name it, whatever your club is. And you have to have good standing in the Swiss Army. So I'm reading this, I'm going, where's this going? And at the very last sentence, above all, you can't be a woman. So I threw it at him. I go, Rudy, what is this all about? He said, well, you know, you're a change agent. And I'm going, but I didn't volunteer to be a change agent. I love technology. I didn't Anyway, but I could write a book on what I experienced there. And it was really interesting. They gave me the most difficult departments. You know, you're sort of in the cleanup mode. Give it to Monique. She can clean it up, you know. But the whole thing is every step of the way was an enriching experience for me. You may see adversity, but see something better than that. You need to be persistent, okay? If I were to say something, persistence is something that you really have to have. The courage, you need to risk. Ladies and gentlemen, risk. I don't care if you have A's or B's or C's, risk it. You have to be passionate about something. What drives you? Is it chess? Is it riding a horse? You know, when we have a dialogue, what's going to drive you? What do you want to do with all of this? So you take it, I mean, it's happening now. I gave you examples of what's happening now. Do you think those women and myself are giving up on it? No, you don't, because there are good people around me. There are great men. By the way, I've had the best male coaches. So great people. You just have people who are just short-sighted. And we all can change that world together. Does that make sense for you? Great. Any other questions or comments? What are you going to do with this technology? What are you going to do with those statistics? Right? Great. No more questions? Well, I'm very humbled. Thank you.